Welcome to the home of Florida's finest everything. Naples, Marco Island, and the Everglades. They call it Florida's Paradise Coast for a reason. Bask in 30 miles of soft white sand beaches, luxurious hotels, and stunning beachfront resorts with delectable dining experiences. Take advantage of warmth, relaxation, and endless outdoor adventures. When you want a Florida vacation that's exceptional in every way, only Paradise will do. Naples, Marco Island, and the Everglades, Florida's Paradise Coast. Plan your visit now at paradisecoast.com. I'm a sneaker kind of girl. I love comfortable shoes, but I also want them to look cute. The New Balance 1080 is that versatile go-to sneaker that's ready for anything. I wear them to the gym, I wear them out on jogs, I wear them around the town to go get groceries, I do it all. You get the perfect mix of comfort and performance, so you're covered from coffee runs to race day. Runners love that cushioned midsole because it's got their back, or, well, actually their feet. But basically, it's this giant, cushiony, beautiful marshmallow shoe. Doesn't make sense until you put it on your feet, and then you're like, oh, yeah, Rach, this is just like walking in a marshmallow. Ready to upgrade your kicks? Shop the 1080 now at newbalance.com. See, this is an important switch for us to flip in our lives, is to understand that the permission needs to come from within ourselves. We need to have the wisdom and the discernment to make decisions over our own lives. That is your birthright. That is your individual power. That is, I think, so important for you to be able to move forward in life with not just confidence in yourself, but also peace of mind about whatever you decide to do next. Hey guys, it's Rach. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And I have a favor, which sounds kind of harsh if we just met, but I'm assuming that most of you have been a part of this community for a hot minute. And so I gotta ask, are you subscribed to the podcast? Subscribing to the podcast you listen to regularly is one of the best things that you can do for hosts like me. It helps to support the show and the staff that works on it. It ensures that you never miss an episode when we drop a new one. And here's the cool thing about subscribing. If you do it and then you hate this show, just unsubscribe. It's one click away. In the meantime, if you're listening, we would so appreciate it if you would just tap that button and make it official. Hi guys, it's Rach. Welcome to another episode of the show and the conversation that you and I have been having for like 8 years. Not really, but also sort of really, because today we're talking about asking for permission. Meaning, I still get so many questions in voicemails, in DMs, in notes. You guys come up to me in real life and ask some version of, I want to pursue my goals, but, or I want to get their buy-in, or I want, and really the answer to those questions is always going to be some version of finding the courage to live life on your terms without asking for permission. But how do we do that? I have been doing podcast episodes about it. I've written about it in books. Honestly, Girl, Stop Apologizing was essentially one big manifesto on not asking for permission, but it still comes up. Perhaps it will for a very long time. And so we're going to dive into it again today because I still see so many women caught in this trap, and maybe some men too. Today's episode is going to be all about stopping the habit of asking for permission. And before you think that you definitely don't do that, let me lovingly ask if you've ever held yourself back from speaking up, from chasing a dream, from posting your art, from asking for a raise. Have you ever held yourself back from going to dinner alone or going to a concert you really wanted to see, all because you weren't sure what other people would think? That's asking for permission, silently, subconsciously, constantly for some of us. And you don't need it. You never did. This episode is inspired by a chapter in Girl Stop Apologizing called Stop Asking for Permission. And if you've read it, you know I'm going to give it to you straight. We're going to dive a little deeper. We're going to talk about it a little longer. We're going to ask how we can show up as a more authentic, courageous, bold version of ourselves. And if this speaks to you, well, pull up a chair, turn up the volume. Let's dig in. Let's start by asking what this might look like when it shows up in our lives today. Because I don't think people always realize that they are raised or molded to seek other people's approval for a lot of things they do in life. So, how might this show up? You might be stuck in permission mode if you say things like, "Is that okay?" Or, "I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you want to eat? I don't know, where do you want to go?" Do you think that makes sense? Or you have a creative outlet that you are afraid to put out in the world, like a business idea or a book that you've written or poetry or photography, because your cousin or your boss or your high school nemesis might see it and judge you for it, right? That's asking for permission. That's thinking that the only way you should be allowed to put something out in the world is if everybody else is going to love it. Or maybe it's a goal that you want to pursue but don't. You daydream about changing your life, like you want to go back to school, or you want to start a YouTube page, or you want to move to a different city, but you feel like someone else in your life needs to buy into the goal before you say yes to the idea. Here's my story. When I started my very small media company, no one would have called it a media company, certainly not me. I had a little blog where I wrote about event planning, which was my day-to-day job. And when I started that blog, I honestly didn't know how I would monetize it. No one in my life made money having a website. This is like 2008, 2009. So it was not common to have any kind of public persona online talking about your life and somehow making that into a business. And over time, we did figure out how to turn that into a business. I hired an assistant, and then I hired editors, and then I hired a food photographer. And slowly but surely, this small but mighty team turned into like a legit business. And that legit business had a real office, and we produced real work for big advertising partners. And the blog at one point was doing over 1 million unique visitors every month, which was absolutely insane. Like, I mean, I think if I had 1 million unique visitors to my website today, the website would probably break because it's 100 years old and I don't really know how to use it. But I really was like doing this cool thing and leading this incredible team. But I remember that I would go to events with my then husband, and it was very uncommon for the wives at those events to even have a job. There were a lot of stay-at-home moms, and they were awesome. But here I was doing this thing, and people would ask me like what I was up to, and I would make it really small. I would just be like, "Oh, like I write sometimes," and like, "Oh, I have a little blog." Like I would make it this super diminished thing. I didn't feel confident in talking about my business at all. I understand now why I did that, but at the time, I was so terrified of people judging me for being ambitious. I didn't see any women who looked like me, which, by the way, was definitely a signal. Like, I should have looked for community that was more in line with who I was and who I wanted to be. But when you don't see anybody who looks like you or who's doing what you're doing, and kind of everybody else around you is doing what you're doing in a completely different way, meaning being a wife and a mother, they all were like a very specific type of wife and mother. And then here I was being a wife and mother, but I was working and I had my own company and I didn't want to be different because I was still seeking permission. I wanted approval. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to like show up as a good plus one. And I really developed a very bad habit of playing small. And it stole years of momentum. Years. Like, if I had just been like, this is where I am and this is what I'm doing, I feel like I would have developed so much faster. I would have grown courage so much faster. I think I would have probably even increase my ambition. Maybe I would have found other people like me at those awesome parties. Like maybe I would have found the one or two other plus ones who had their own businesses. Maybe I would have found friends. Like who knows? I'll never know what I lost by not just showing up as myself. And the really funny thing was, no one was actively asking me to play small. It was just this narrative that I had in my head about what a mom and a wife was supposed to look like. And when I didn't look like that, I felt like something was wrong with me. It wasn't until probably, gosh, that was like 2008, 2009. So it wasn't until truly 2017 that I made the decision to show up as myself and that I felt like I was allowed to show up as myself. And I remember thinking, like, it was this huge epiphany for me, like, God made me this way. I came into the world this way. This is how I am. And if God made me this way, then it can't be a bad thing. Like ambition can't be a bad thing. Certainly, anything in life can get warped and twisted and become something it's not supposed to be. But like, I'm not hurting anybody. My kids are healthy and happy. I'm just doing this thing. Why have I made it so bad in my own mind? It took me, what is that, 8 or 9 years? That's almost a decade to find the courage to show up as myself. And that's just a decade. Once I figured out who myself was, that's not even the previous many decades where I struggled to have the courage to even figure out who I was. So, my question for you today is, who are you waiting on? Who are you waiting on? Who is going to give you the authority to decide what to do with your life? Let's be real. This is not just your story. This is so many people's story. A recent study said something crazy like 75% of female executives are still experiencing imposter syndrome. Despite their accomplishments, despite the fact that they have earned the right to be in the position that they're in, they are still dealing with a feeling of, oh my gosh, what if people figure out that I'm not as great as they think I am? Like, what if people realize that I shouldn't be here? Deep down, we are, many of us, raised to believe that we need an authority figure in our life to tell us that we're allowed to be where we are. It's springtime, which means, at least here in Southern California, it's all about outdoor living. And this time of year, one of the best places to shop for all the outdoor goodies is Wayfair. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your summer home goals with endless inspiration for every space and every budget, including the outdoors. You can get big stuff like patio sets, gazebos, y'all, even hot tubs are available. I swear, every time I go online to look for stuff for my home, I always end up finding things on their website. Get your outdoor space ready today so you can enjoy and hang all season long. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online. This summer, get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. If you've ever learned about nutrition in a way that you didn't know before, and suddenly you're way more thoughtful about what your food is made with, what's on the back of the label, it can be really confusing when you're first starting out to understand what means what you should buy for your family, and what you should leave at the store. Well, now you can spend less time at the grocery store thanks to Thrive Market, your new go-to online grocery store for getting all of your healthy essentials delivered. With over 1,000 harmful ingredients banned from their store, Thrive Market's team of product researchers do the hard work so you don't have to spend all of your time trying to figure out what is in the food you are ordering. Finding better options for your whole family is super easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. You can scan a product you already have and it instantly recommends healthier items. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/rach for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/rach. thrivemarket.com/rach. Remember that scene in Legally Blonde? Go with me, okay? Elle did not ask permission to apply to Harvard. She just decided to go, right? And once she got in, she still kept having to remind herself and explain to other people that she belonged there. That's what this work looks like. Reminding yourself daily, if you have to, that you do not need to be validated by someone else to live the life that you want to live, to pursue the dreams and goals that you want to pursue, and to show up as yourself. This behavior, if you've got it, is not your fault. It's not. And I'm not one of those people who's like, it's not your fault. Everything is it's not. I'm not into blaming other people. But in this particular instance, this is how you were raised. If you have this particular trait, if you feel like you are looking for an authority figure to validate you, or you are asking for permission, this is how you were raised, 1,000,000%. If you were raised as a girl in almost any society, I don't care where you grew up, you were likely taught to be nice, to be polite, to be likable, to be small, and in a lot of cultures, you were probably raised to value the way that you looked and the way other people perceived the way that you looked. You would be rewarded for being pleasing, for asking nicely, for being a good girl. And I'm not saying that's all girls, and I'm sure that there are men listening to this who have their own version of it, but typically boys are told to go for it, and girls are told to wait their turn, right? Don't be bossy. Why are you so loud? We are raised in a patriarchal structure. We are. And authority often looks like someone else having to say yes before we're allowed to move. And that someone typically has a penis. You know it's true, man. If we internalize this, and of course we did, it's wired in us. And girl, look, I'm talking mostly to the ladies. I know there are guys that listen to this, and I'm positive that y'all have your own version of this. But can we just add an extra layer and say that if you were raised in these kinds of cultures, let's add the extra layer of religion, where most of the time, then you have an additional authority figure that is usually depicted as a male, even though God can't be either. We're not even going to go down that rabbit hole, but we are, Jesus and God in the culture I was raised in, always a male figure. So you have this added layer of another authority figure, always male, which has to erode our belief in ourselves as women. If the authority figure we are always shown is a man, what does that tell us about our own judgment and our own belief? Right? I think that a lot of that stuff weaves its way into how we show up in the world, how we show up at work, in our relationships, on social media, inside of our own goals. And there's no shame on us for learning to adapt, because that is what you do as a little kid to survive. You go along to get along, right? But I am mad that we're still living in it. At a certain point, we have to become the adult who tells our inner child that we are safe and that we get to take up space and that we are allowed to decide. So let's get tactical. How do you stop asking for permission when it's been like your automatic setting for 30 years? I got some ideas. Of course I do. Number one, have you considered writing a no more permission list? Meaning, write down everything that you have been waiting to be allowed to do. So that looks like taking a vacation, starting a side hustle, quitting your job, asking someone for help, buying the damn shoes. What are all the things that if you do them, it's not going to burn down your life, it's not going to hurt anybody else. You just don't do it because you're worried about what they will think of you. And then write yourself a permission slip. Like old school, do they still do that with kids today? I don't even know. But back in our day, kids, we would have to get a permission slip to do something. I want y'all to write yourself a permission. I hereby give myself full permission to go get a massage. I can afford it. I have the time. I deserve the right to relax and practice self-care. I hereby give myself full permission to go up to the hot girl at the bar and see if I can hit on her. I full on give myself permission to do these things that I want to try and not worry about people thinking I'm ridiculous or indulgent. If we go back to the famous quote my therapist said to me that I wrote about in Girl, Wash Your Face, someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. Give yourself permission to act with courage, with authority over your own life, and leave what they think of you, leave that to them. That's not any of your concern. The second thing that you can do is practice tiny moments, micro boldness. Do one tiny bold thing a day. Something that feels bold to you, something that feels wild to you, something that feels scary. Say no without explaining. Pitch yourself, ask directly, say what you feel, walk into a room like you belong there. Here are some little scripts. Thank you, but that doesn't work for me. Thank you, but that doesn't work for me. Period. No explanation. This is the direction that I'm heading now. I am choosing what's right for me right now. Think of these actions that you can take in the same way that we go work out at the gym. And we're like, okay, I'm going to work on my bicep. So I'm going to do some bicep curls with 8-pound weights, right? And in the beginning, it feels really hard to do your reps with 8-pound weights, but you keep practicing. And then you can do bicep curls with 10-pound weights because your muscle's stronger. So you try these little bold moves that are pretty small, and it gives you courage and foundation to try some bold moves that are a bit bigger. The third thing I want you to do is stop polling the audience. Stop asking other people for advice about the thing that you want to do. Trust yourself. Trust yourself to make the decision. And if the decision ends up being horribly wrong, trust yourself to figure out what to do next from here. Next time you want to try something new, don't ask for advice. Try the thing first. Live it. Then get ideas from the experience and move on from there. The other day, I was at a doctor's appointment with my kids. You know, time of year, we got to get the annual physicals done. They're headed to summer camp. Very exciting. And that takes forever. It takes like 9 years to go to the doctor. He was getting checked out, and I had a lot of time to kill while I was waiting for him. And I just got the wildest hair. I was like, I'm going to go get rollerblades. I am going to get some rollerblades. I had this wild hair about a year and a half ago because I loved rollerblading as a kid. It was like my favorite. And I had this wild hair a year and a half ago. I was like, I'm going to get rollerblades. And I ordered some, and I didn't do my research, and they showed up and they were so cheap and so garbage. And I was mad at myself. I ended up returning them. And that was kind of the end of my rollerblading foray. And for whatever reason, while I'm sitting there in this doctor's appointment, I was like, I'm going to get rollerblades. And so while I was waiting for him, I did a bunch of research. Shout out to these beautiful girls on YouTube who just like roller skate all day and tell you what rollerblades to buy. So I go watch one of those girls, and she's like, here's the rollerblades I'd get. And I was like, well, I'm a grown adult person, so I'm going to just go. I got my rollerblades. I got wrist guards, not something I wore when I was little, but I was like, I am a writer. That is like my actual job, and I feel like my hands need to work. So probably would be smart to get wrist guards. So I got some rollerblades and some wrist guards while he's in this doctor's appointment. He comes out that night at dinner. I announced to the table, my husband, my child, I'm like, I got myself rollerblades. And everyone's like, what? And Kez is like, did you get a helmet? Like, what if you fall? He gets really worried. And I'm like, I will be fine. But also, I am 42. I did not need to ask anyone to buy in. I didn't need anyone's permission. I'm telling you this, I'm really excited because the rollerblades are supposed to arrive today. And I have visions of myself just like whizzing down the street. Who even knows what's about to happen to me? Could be hilarious. Next week, I'll be like, guys, I should have got a helmet. But my point is, I know it's just like this small thing, but how many people have like these little small things they would want to do for themselves, like start rollerblading again in their 40s, but they think it's silly, or they would want someone to do it with them, or they'd want their partner to say it's okay. Stop polling the audience. Just do the thing.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Last piece of advice here is track your evidence. If you ever went to a Rise conference with me, we used to do this thing where we would write letters to ourselves from our tenacity, like from the part of us that never gave up, from the part of us that was grit and determination, because we don't give ourselves enough credit for the things we actually accomplish. And that can be really powerful in a situation like we're talking about right now. Keep a list of the things you did without permission that went well, because that list becomes your proof. That list becomes your fuel. That becomes when you start to second guess yourself, or you let the voice in the back of your head take over. That's the thing that you can come back to and say, no, you know what? We're fine. We've done this before. It turns out okay. We're going to keep moving in this direction. Bonus tip that I wrote down for you guys on this point: studies show that confidence increases when action precedes approval. In other words, do the thing first, your brain's going to catch up later. Remember, our brains are wired to like an ancient animal whose only job it is to keep us safe and keep us alive. And if you marry that knowledge with the fact that then you were raised in a home where an authority figure gave you permission, that would make the animal part of your brain that's in fight or flight mode, it's going to make that part of your brain think that the way that you have stayed safe is by asking for permission from an authority figure, which is pretty crazy. Do you ever just step back? Those of us who had parents that were questionable as parents, do you ever just step back and go like, that's the person that I was looking for guidance? That's who kept me alive? Like that's because when you separate now as an adult looking at that person, you're like, well, they're literally crazy and they had no idea what they were doing. And they actually probably did more harm than good. But that's still the voice in the back of your head. It makes no sense. So don't even let your brain have a moment to jump into the party. Do the thing, take the action, and then let that part of your brain see that everything's okay and you survived. And it gives you the ability to pursue more things like that without so much anxiety the next time. See, this is an important switch for us to flip in our lives, is to understand that the permission needs to come from within ourselves. We need to have the wisdom and the discernment to make decisions over our own lives. That is your birthright. That is your individual power. That is, I think, so important for you to be able to move forward in life with not just confidence in yourself, but also peace of mind about whatever you decide to do next. Let's make this actionable. Let's do a little guided reflection right now. So if you're in your car, after I ask these questions, you could pause and just kind of speak your answers out into the world. If you're where you have a journal, that would be amazing. Write these down as journal prompts, however you want to do this. But I think it would be really helpful to take some notes if you can and answer these questions honestly for yourself. Number one, what would you do this month if no one could stop you? What would you do this month if no one could stop you? I mean, I got a list like 100 lines long. There's so many things that I would love to do if there was absolute freedom and no restrictions. We don't always have full freedoms to do whatever we want if there are other people counting on us, right? The person that I am today as a mom with 4 kids at home versus who I would be if I did not have kids to take care of, completely different humans. Completely different humans. I would not be living the life that I am living today if I didn't have kids at home. My life would be a lot more free. I feel like I would be a digital nomad. I wouldn't have a regular house. I would like just be out living my life on the open road. So we have to acknowledge the fact that we don't have full freedom to do anything at any time. But I do think it is a very powerful practice to ask yourself what you would do if you had absolute freedom. Because in the answer to that question, you will find the yearning of your heart. One of my favorite practices in life is when I'm feeling a little blah, I always ask, what would I do right now if I could do anything? Anything in the world, what would I do? And sometimes my answer is, I wish I was laying by a pool in Cabo eating chips and guac. And sometimes my answer is, I just wish I was taking a nap. And sometimes my answer is, I wish that I was getting on a plane to go to Paris to have a meeting and speak at a conference or whatever. Based on whatever I come up with, that is an indication to me what I am craving. So if I'm like, oh, I wish I was getting on a plane to go to Paris to speak at a conference. Ooh, okay, well, I'm craving adventure, adventure in the form of new experiences through my work. If I say, I wish I was like face down on a massage table, half asleep, getting my shoulders rubbed. Well, that's probably a sign that I'm tired, I need rest, I probably need some kind of self-care. By letting my imagination run wild, I come up with what I actually need. And while I can't like run away with a circus or be hopping on a plane to Paris, as a mom here raising kids, that little trick can at least shine a light on what I do need. And what I do need is always achievable, always. So it's worth asking yourself a question. Also, if you don't have kids and you do have freedom, oh my God, please go live fully for those of us who are busy raising babies. Okay, second question. What are you tired of waiting on? Ooh. What are you tired of waiting on? You've been waiting on ... for 6 months, for 2 years, for 10. What are you tired of waiting on? I'm not going to tell you what to do with that information. This is your life. But what are you tired of waiting on? Last question. What is one bold move you can make today that doesn't need anybody's approval? What's something you could do today that does not need anyone's approval but your own? So pause this if you want to answer those questions right now. Speak it aloud to yourself, or maybe if you have your journal, write it down. But don't just skip over this practice. Take a minute and figure out your answers. If you need to hear me say it, and sometimes we do, you don't need your mom's approval. You don't need your boss's blessing. You don't need your partner's permission. You don't even need your past self's expectations. You need belief. You need clarity. And you need the guts to move before it feels comfortable. So let me ask you again. Who are you waiting on? Okay, one last thought before I leave you with the subject today, and that is to consider the cost of waiting, the cost of asking permission, the cost of staying inside of this structure that you've been living out. Every time you delay a dream, you delay a version of you that could have grown into something extraordinary. Every time you wait for validation, you give away your power. Every time you hesitate, someone else with less talent but more confidence moves ahead of you. And look, this is not about hustle, and this is not about pressure. It's about ownership. It's about realizing that your time is precious. It is the only non-renewable resource that you've got. Think about what waiting, what asking for permission, what hoping that they're going to get on board. Think of how much time that has already cost you. And what might it cost you next year if you don't make a move? I wrote down some inspiration, but these are so cheesy, but you're cheesy like me, so you can just roll with it. These are a couple women that I thought of who did not wait for permission. The first, Moana. Don't laugh. She went beyond that reef. Even though her mom and dad told her not to, even though she just lost her grandma and the grandma's under like a glowing Manta ray helps her over the thing. Oh, if you do not cry when the grandma, when the, we're getting off topic. I know. Okay. My point is, she felt the calling of her heart. She felt like there was a purpose for her and she followed it. Not because they told her that she should or that she could. In fact, they were like, if you leave this island, you will die. Those are some pretty crazy odds. So maybe you need to channel some Moana energy, okay? You need to get out beyond the reef. My second example, equally cheesy, you're here for it, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, they stole her albums. She re-recorded Taylor's versions. She rebuilt her empire. Have you ever seen Miss Americana? And I'm not saying that this is the healthiest mentality, but when she gets that call from her publicist that she didn't get nominated for any Grammys, and she's like, all right, I just have to write another album. I am not saying that that is like healthy, but dang it if that woman didn't go on to create the biggest tour of all time. She did not ask for anyone's permission. In fact, if we're being real, Taylor Swift has so many people who love and adore her, and probably an equal amount of people who actively hate her. Think about that. And she's one of the most successful women on the planet. She's one of the most successful humans on the planet. She knows her worth. Every woman you admire has this thing in common. She moved before she was ready. She moved before she was invited. She moved without asking for permission. So I'm going to ask you again. Who are you waiting on? This is your moment. This is your time. I want you to think back to where you were a year ago. I was remembering something that happened a year ago. I just like the most random memory flitted into my mind of something that happened a year ago. And I thought, my God, I can't believe it's been a year since that moment. And what have I done to push that dream forward? Yeah, sure, I've pushed it forward in small ways. But what would it look like right now if I went back a year ago and with my whole focus and my whole heart, I went all in on that thing? Where would I be right now if I had put more time, more energy, less concern for what people would think about if I made that choice? What if I hadn't played safe? The beauty of this life is that, God willing, we wake up tomorrow and we get another chance. So if you look back on where you were a year ago and realize you've gotten off course, or you're not as far along as you wish you were, it's not a sign that you screwed up. It's a fantastic realization that you still have time, that you still have a chance to make it right, that you still have the opportunity to go again. But I promise you, if you keep putting so much energy into what they will think of you for pursuing whatever it is you want to pursue, you are giving your very limited power away. You have infinite power. You are an infinite being full of all the vibes and energy and all of it. But I know you. You're busy. You have responsibilities. You got a lot of stuff going on in your life. So if you only have a limited amount of energy to put against this effort of this thing that you want in your life, and you're using the very small window of time and the very small amount of energy that you have to ask someone else to buy in first or wait for someone else to give you permission, what a freaking loss. That's why we're not as far as we want to be. We've used all the energy we have trying to convince our big sister that the idea is good. Becky doesn't get a say. This is your life. This is your shot. What are you going to do about it? Yeah, I know it would feel so much better if everyone got it, if they got the vision, if they saw what we see, if they were all in. But that's likely not going to be your story. Wasn't Moana's story, wasn't Taylor's story. And if it didn't happen for those awesome chicks, it means there's probably even less of a chance that we're going to find this magical unicorn hype squad that's just going to love and support every idea we have. So it can't be about other people. It has to be about you and your heart and what you think you should do next. And I hope that you will. And I hope if you got something out of today's episode, you will consider sharing it with a friend. And if you need to take a deep dive on this subject, that is literally all Girl Stop Apologizing is about. But either way, I hope you pursue the thing. I hope you give it a try. Even if you fail, you will have gained so much because you stood in your own power and you made your own choices. And that is all any of us can hope for. I love you, and I'm rooting for you.
The Rachel Hollis podcast is produced by me, Rachel Hollis. It's edited by Andrew Weller and Jack Noble.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode, idiot.
Dear old work platform, it's not you, it's us. Actually, it is you. Endless onboarding? Constant IT bottlenecks? We've had enough. We need a platform that just gets us. And to be honest, we've met someone new. They're called Monday.com, and it was love at first onboarding. Their beautiful dashboards, their customizable workflows got us floating on a digital Cloud 9. So no hard feelings, but we're moving on. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.